Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook, and welcome back to this conversation about homelessness. We covered some interesting ground in our last show, and Robert Stromberg from Destination Home has been kind enough to stick around and have us discuss more about this topic. So, Bob, thank you for hanging out and having us dive deeper into this conversation. A couple of things I'd like to start with, if I can. What we didn't talk at all about in the last show was your organization, Destination Home. Can you tell us a little bit about Destination Home?
Yeah, I'd love to. Destination Home is about 8 years old. We're a small organization. We have staff of 8 people currently. And the organization was really founded to be a public-private partnership and convener of the diversity of stakeholders who are working on addressing homelessness in our community. So in other words, we are not a housing developer, and we are not a government entity, and we are not a direct service provider helping directly folks who are experiencing homelessness. But we work to bring together all of those groups and to support all of those groups so they can do their jobs effectively, and in many cases, more effectively. So we're looking at the system to see what's missing. What do we need to test out to see if we can address something better? Where are the gaps that need to be filled? For example, we're currently piloting a program where we're going to be looking at pathways to employment for folks who are experiencing homelessness and who have recently ended their homelessness. What's wrong with our existing job training systems that they're not addressing the specific needs of those who've experienced homelessness? For example, if there's anything. What can we pilot and then have it scale up within the existing institutions in order to address that and other specific needs? So that's a kind of broad picture of Destination Home.
Are there organizations like yours in other communities? I know you're here in Santa Clara County. Are there organizations like yours in other counties in the greater San Francisco Bay Area?
So yes and no. I'm not an expert on other counties, so I can't get into too much detail. There are some similar functions served by nonprofit organizations in some of our neighboring counties. But typically it's divided a little bit more between the housing side and the service production side.
Oh, okay.
But it is a part of a collective impact model where you have a convener central organization that's really trying to bring everyone together, and I failed to mention, hold everyone accountable. Because as we know, we hear our council members and our supervisors and our assembly members, they love to point fingers at the other jurisdiction in terms of who's responsible and who's at fault. It's a good thing for election day, right? Have it be somebody else's fault. But we need to have somebody who's really calling on all of those actors and all of those jurisdictions to say, we have to address this together, and it's going to take all of us working toward the same goal.
Got it, got it. Do you find, because the San Francisco Bay Area is trying to be more of a consolidated area rather than, separating? I mean, we're trying to do it with our transit system. We're trying to do it with a number of other things. Are you beginning to see some collaborative activity with other communities other than those here in Santa Clara County?
So in broad strokes, yes. For example, we know we're going to need more state legislation on this issue in order to prioritize extremely low-income housing, for example, among affordable housing production. And that's going to be something that needs to take place across the Bay Area or across the state. The same for some additional sustainable funding streams. That's going to require probably state legislation or even federal action. So on those levels, there is an increase in collaboration between stakeholders. On other issues, it really is very local. And so always a part of my initiative is called Housing Ready Communities, and that's about community engagement to build an action network of supporters so that we can get the policy reform passed and the specific lowest income affordable and supportive housing developments approved by cities or planning commissions or financing approved by a board of supervisors. And on that level, you're really talking about a very local, basically community organizing that's required. We need to build political power at the neighborhood level to implement the proven solutions to homelessness.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for that explanation. So there were a couple of things we didn't get to talk too much about in the last show, and I want to get into some of the things that we are accomplishing. But before we go into those, there were a couple of graphics that I thought were pretty telling, that I thought it made sense to show to the people. One of them is number 5, which talks about the challenges we face and the solutions that can associate with them. And I know this is one of those things that you talk a lot about when you are at a community function and explaining things to people, because we've got this, you know, it's like homelessness, for instance, one of them, the homelessness impacts neighborhoods throughout the community. It's not just an isolated situation. It's not in one part of Santa Clara County, South San Jose or something like that. It's all over the county. And I thought the interesting thing we talked about earlier was the diversity of the population, because we don't think about that. We have this image of the guy who's on, you know, or the somebody on a street corner holding a sign, but that's just like not. I mean, we've got a very. It's a cross section of humanity there as well as any place else. I want to talk about the financial impact a little bit, because what are we seeing when it comes to the types of social services that are part of the infrastructure, fire, police, medical, emergency responders and stuff like that. What are we seeing in relationship to the impact on those kinds of things when it comes to somebody who is able to get off the street and into a more structured living situation?
Yeah, so the previous slide you referred to, I mean, we're building a movement. We're building an action network. We're going to need to take political and community action in order to move this forward. And that's going to require, one, increasing our understanding, two, heightening our awareness of what we see around us. And then it's about coming to terms with the challenge, right? Homelessness is uncomfortable for all of us. It's uncomfortable for the person who has to sleep outside, and it's uncomfortable for the person who has a home and has to experience it in their neighborhood. It's very uncomfortable, and that's a completely natural thing for people to come to terms with.
Right.
And then we want to understand some of the facts. What's the scale of the crisis? What are the solutions that we know? And then we need to talk about the why. Why are we moving toward the solution? Who says it's proven? What's the data behind that?
Yeah.
And then it's re-emphasizing the importance of the individual voices of community members, organizations, other stakeholders who hold power in our community. We can take action to make a difference. On the cost side, we commissioned a study about 4 years ago that looked at the cost of managing homelessness. So for example, we have now 10,000 roughly individuals who are living outside in Santa Clara County. What does it cost our system, so the kinds of services that you mentioned, in order to address those needs of the people where they are? Not even talking about the housing that we know can end their homelessness.
Right.
And that total number is greater than $500 million every single year in Santa Clara County, and that's county expenses alone.
Now, is that what this graphic represents?
So this graph that you're looking at
Number
is
7.
really about the success of supportive housing. So that's the housing that's proven to end homelessness. Regular apartment building with services inside the building. This graph was taken from a pilot when we first started doing this work in the county. The first 1,000 individuals who were moved from their experience of homelessness into supportive housing, a permanent home with the help they need in order to overcome whatever individual challenges. And each of those bars on the chart is made up of dots that represent a certain public service, in this case a county service. And you can see that at the far left of that graph, it's very low because we're just coming in contact with the individuals. We get more information over time. The zero line in the middle is when each of those 1,000 moves from living outside to living in a home with the services at their front door. And it looks like magic. Because if I have a physical health problem or a mental health problem and I'm living outside and then I'm moved into supportive housing, I get an opportunity to have a roof over my head, kitchen, bathroom, in an apartment building with neighbors and help that I need, my physical and mental health problems don't disappear the very next day.
Right.
But the use of services drops so dramatically because those services are right there. And this represents a cost saving for the county, for our community, for the taxpayer that is significant.
What is that? Do we have any feel for that?
Those who access the most services, so this is not the entire population of those living outside, but the highest, I think 5 or 10%, they cost the community between $60,000 and $80,000 a year.
Per person?
Per person. After moved into supportive housing, those costs can be reduced to about 10 or 11. So that's dramatic if you start to multiply that, even if we're only talking about the limited population of those who are experiencing chronic homelessness, so
Right.
multiple years.
Right, right. Wow.
This cost study, in fact, and this pilot were part of what convinced our elected leaders at the county level to put the 2016 Measure A Affordable Housing Bond on the ballot. Without that data that's showing the cost of managing homelessness versus the cost of ending homelessness, that ballot measure may have never been put on the ballot in the first place, and much less gathered public support in order to pass.
Wow. That's pretty significant. That's huge.
There's a lot of people in the community that they see homelessness at its worst, right? Someone who has some sort of physical or mental health condition causing them to act out. They've not had food, they've not had a shower, they've not had a friend in a long time.
Right.
And they start to conflate that problem with everything that has the word homelessness attached to it.
Yes, it's an A equals A kind of a mentality. And I can see that. I can speak to having felt that personally, you
Certainly.
know? I mean, it's just like, at the same time, I have a very good friend who has problems, he's fortunately not homeless, but he has physical and mental and emotional challenges and health issues because he doesn't eat really well and all that kind of stuff. And if I just take that and I extrapolate that to these folks that you see that are out there, you know, it's amazing what happens to someone when you give them a safe place to be. I mean, it changes your whole, the whole dynamic, and that's what you guys are doing, and what this measure that for which we've managed to accumulate some funds has been able to help us accomplish thus far. And we're, like you said, we're taking some steps forward, we and a couple of steps back, but I want to concentrate right now on the positives, because the things that have been accomplished are significant, and for those individuals who are in a position to take advantage of this this housing, it's phenomenal. As a matter of fact, there are a couple of locations in Santa Clara County that we've got some slides on that I just wanted to bring up, and we can show people, and you can tell us a little bit more about where they are. There's one called Second Street Studios, and I'm not sure, I think we have two or three slides. Where is this actual location?
Second Street Studios is the very first 100% permanent supportive housing development in San Jose, and it is located just south of 280, just south of downtown San Jose.
Okay.
Developed by First Community Housing. Interesting statistic about Second Street Studios, I believe there are 134 apartments in the building, and when you add up the total years of homelessness for the individuals who have moved in or are now living there as neighbors, that building ended more than 400 years of homelessness.
That's amazing.
And at the same time, improved the quality of life in the neighborhood. You go today, you talk to the board of the neighborhood association, it's called Spartan Keys Neighborhood. You ask them about how worried they were when they first heard about this being proposed. Again, it's this seeing the most ugly piece of homelessness and then attributing that to what's actually part of the solution. But ask them what they feel about that building today and how it's improved the quality of life in that neighborhood. If we implement the solutions that are most effective to end and prevent homelessness, not only do we help the people who are living outside today, we help all of us who live in those neighborhoods already.
Right.
And Second Street Studios is a beautiful example of that.
That's very cool. So now, how do you vet who it is that has the opportunity to participate in a structure like Second Street Studios?
Yeah, great question. The shorter answer is just like any other apartment building. The longer answer is, first we need to talk for 2 seconds about what's called our coordinated entry system. So because of federal law, our county has a unified database of everyone who's experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
And that's federal law because we want to make sure everyone is treated fairly. In other words, you might have a really good relationship with a service provider organization and I might not. So you might get better service or faster service than I do. That's not how we want to serve people. We want to serve people based upon need. So everyone is in a unified database. So for example, 2nd Street Studios was dedicated to folks with pretty high service needs, the most vulnerable in our community. That's who we want to help first.
Right, okay.
Makes perfect sense. And so you basically go down the list.
Those are the ones that are taking that have the need to use those services, those that are the cost at the highest utilization, and therefore, by helping them, you have a huge impact on the financial impact.
Also true. Yeah, also true. And so you identify them from this database that's managed by the County of Santa Clara Office of Supportive Housing. And then, but that's not the end of the vetting process because there are many partners that are part of this. You have the developer of the building, then you have a service provider, then, lest we forget, the Santa Clara County Housing Authority, which is the manager of federal housing vouchers, which without them and their work, these developments would not work financially. They would not happen. And so the vetting process is you're selected from the top of this list. I'm a case manager. I go out and try to find Dave, which is not always easy if you don't have a home. I find Dave. I say there's going to be a building at X location in X city. Would you like to live there? Dave says yes. Then we're going to go through the rest of the review process. So you have to fulfill all of the requirements, for example, that come with a federal housing voucher. And then you also have to pass muster with the property manager, who's going to be the manager of the building. So you have to go through all 3 of these steps before you finally are assigned a home in a supportive housing development. And then you sign a lease, just like anybody moving into an apartment.
Very cool. What's the turnover rate?
Turnover, oh, I used to know a number. I mean, the number I know is the success rate. So the success rate is this 90% number. I think in Santa Clara County, it's even 93% right now. Of those who move into permanent supportive housing, are they still stable in their housing 1 year and 2 years later? There is, so 93 is not 100, right? One thing that we see kind of dramatically, it makes sense, there is a high death rate within the first year of moving into supportive housing. You have this phenomenon of someone who has been struggling and under such duress for, in these cases, a long time living outside, that once they're finally able to relax, they pass away. We also have an aging homelessness population. I think it's something like 40% of the total of those who are experiencing homelessness in our community are over the age of 50.
Oh, wow.
And half of them entered homelessness after they turned 50 years old.
Wow.
So we have a growing senior population of homelessness. That's a real struggle for our community right now. We need specific policy solutions in order to stem that growth among the senior population.
Wow. Yes. Wow. I wasn't aware of that one. So we've got another location, Path Ventures. Where's that one located?
Path Ventures is essentially, Path Ventures is the developer.
Oh, is the developer.
They're the developer arm of a service provider who's worked for a long time in Southern California and been in San Jose for 6 or 7 years now, called just Path.
Okay.
And they're the service provider in this building. This one just opened in November. It's a little bit smaller. I believe it's 84 apartment homes in that apartment building.
Okay.
And that's on the north side of downtown San Jose.
Is that the one that I visited with you?
We were at 2nd Street Studios.
We were at 2nd Street Studios.
The previous one, yeah. Villas on the Park is the name of this development. Had not yet opened or completed construction when we met.
And is this one open now?
This one's open now. People started moving in November.
And how many homes are there?
That's, I think, 84.
84.
If I remember correctly.
Very cool. And then there's another one, the Veranda.
The Veranda was the first completed development with funding from this county affordable housing bond. It's a smaller one. It is much smaller, and it is located in Cupertino. And this brings to another point about the homelessness population. There are those who have high service needs, and we talked about this 25% who have been chronically homeless, so a long period of time, some kind of disabling condition.
Right.
But the remainder have lower service needs.
Yeah.
And they're not going to necessarily even need permanent supportive housing. They need temporary assistance. So for the developments that are moving forward right now, there are kind of two models. There's this 100% supportive housing, like Second Street Studios and Villas on the Park that we just looked at. Then there's another model where you have a third, sometimes half, that are supportive housing for folks who have experienced homelessness. And the remainder are these lowest income affordable housing developments to stop future homelessness. And the veranda is dedicated to seniors and has 2/3 of those homes for folks who have low incomes. And a lot of seniors in our community are on a fixed income.
Right.
And that income is not increasing at the same rate as rents. So we need more of this affordable housing for this lowest income group.
Interesting. Interesting.
Beautiful building, the veranda.
Yeah. And you've got a couple of locations that are coming on in the next year or two, right?
Yeah.
Like one in Milpitas, I think, that's coming.
So the affordable housing bond, the county bond, that's not the Second Street Studios happened before that money was available, for example, but that bond has already financed 21 different developments.
Wow.
If you count up the ones that existed before we had that bond money available, there are more than 50 apartment buildings in Santa Clara County with supportive housing in them. Sometimes it's the entire building, sometimes it's a part of it, and those are in 10 different cities. So some of the upcoming, there are several in San Jose. San Jose makes up population-wise half of the entire county.
Sure.
Geography-wise, I think even more. But there's one in Gilroy that's opening in a few weeks. There is one in, or not a few months. There's one in Morgan Hill. I know there's one in Milpitas as well that's coming down the line. They're in cities, as I said, 10 cities throughout the entire county. We have 15 cities in our county. They're in 10 cities.
And I'm struck by this comment about the senior population. When we look at these that are coming on the next year or two, are they, to what degree is it vetted, or is it intended for senior population, for the seniors? I mean, it's an area that interests me because I'm in that generation. Okay, that's it's strange to me and scary to me to see some of the folks that I see who are on the streets who are like in my age group. It's like it's freaky. It is, because I don't get it, you know. Anyway, I was just curious as to...
the numbers are there. I mean, there are certainly some developments that are dedicated to seniors. This veranda in Cupertino is one. The one in Gilroy is also dedicated to seniors. There's one being proposed. There's another one that's being proposed, or several actually, that are additionally being proposed right now. They're going to be supportive housing, or at least a portion of it supportive housing.
Right.
That will be for this lowest income senior group. The problem is that when you have folks on a fixed income here in our community, we talked about in the previous show, with income, the average income or the median, the middle income is going up so dramatically because of the income rise of those at the top.
Right.
So it pulls up the middle away from the folks who have a fixed income.
Right.
So sometimes a senior who lives in affordable housing is every year less able to pay their rent. I met a gentleman who lives in not supportive housing but affordable housing, and his income is roughly $900, and his rent keeps going up. And this year, when I spoke with him, he has about $113 left for the month.
Wow.
Scary. So he is really scraping by even to get the amount of nutrition that he needs to survive.
So we have about 5 minutes left in our show, so I was hoping that in this last 5 minutes we can talk about what people can do to get in the game.
Well, it's really important to get involved. I can't say that enough. My job is to manage this Housing Ready Communities initiative, and that is to go out to communities and, yes, answer questions, help people understand the crisis and the solution, but really to recruit folks to be a part of our Housing Ready Communities Action Network. And what that network does is respond to make sure that we approve the housing developments that come forward, that we are pushing for broad policy solutions upstream to address the systems issues about this. We don't want to solve this in a Band-Aid fashion. We want to solve this for the future. And to do that, we're going to have to look upstream and make some tough policy decisions, and our elected leaders are going to need our help to do it. And so we need to push on them. And it's coming together. The third piece of that about what you can do to take action, and that's what Housing Ready Communities is designed for, is to learn the information and replicate it. We have learned that there are certain messaging arcs, techniques, storylines that are very effective for involving other individuals in the community. It's very easy with this issue. It's growing. It's really horrible in many parts of our community to throw up your hands and say, nothing is working, nobody's doing anything, there's no plan. So if you can learn about what is the plan, what is our community plan to end homelessness?
So where do people go to get that information?
So on our website, destinationhomesv.org, or you can go to the shortcut. We have a shortcut, housingready.org, right, to make it easy. There's a way to sign up to be a part of that action network. There are workshops happening throughout the community. I have a plan this year to do a workshop in each of San Jose's 10 city council districts and also in multiple cities throughout the community. There's lots of opportunities to learn the information. There's a video online of the presentation that you can watch from the comfort of your own phone or computer. And that is the great place to start to obtain a baseline of information and then reach out and get in touch with us. My email is super easy, bob@housingready.org. Right? You can find it on the website as well. And ask to sign up. Ask to be a part of this growing movement because we're going to need it to get the change that we need to address this for the long term.
Makes sense. Cool. Well, Bob, thank you. Thanks for joining me for these 2 shows here to talk about this topic. And maybe we'll, in another 6 to 8 months, we could do another one to see what happens and what progress has been made. I appreciate the opportunities, not the opportunities, but the encouragement of people who may be watching this show to think about doing something. I mean, we see these ads on TV regularly for, the dogs who, the animal, ASPCA's got problems with the animals, this and that and the other thing. This is one of those things that's in your backyard. It's in your community. And the impact that you can have on the individuals who are suffering from this problem, and the impact you can have to benefit the community at large by addressing this problem and participating is huge. So again, thank you for being there. You look like you had one last thing to say.
Just to add, there are direct service volunteer opportunities that are incredibly valuable. You can help people directly with a meal, with socks, with a backpack, with things that people need to survive and be comfortable. But civic participation and taking political action is a new kind of volunteerism that we need more people to get involved in.
Hear, hear. All right. Well, Bob, again, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, appreciate your watching. Don't forget to send those queries into info@referencepointtv.com. We'll see you next time on Reference Point.